go to spoilercon.org.
Yes.
Go to spoilercon.org. Check it out. There is now a Wheel of Time West Coast con.
We're just working on finishing up a few final details, and tickets should be available shortly. Probably, certainly by the time this recording comes out.
Awesome.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick. Chapter 34 of The Shadow Rising. He who comes with the dawn, and our symbol is the dragon banner. The dawn shadows shortened and paled as Rand and Matt jogged across the barren, still dark valley floor, leaving fog-shrouded Rhuidean behind. The dry air hinted at heat to come, but the slight breeze actually felt cool to Rand, with no coat. That would not last. Full blistering daylight would be on them soon. They hurried as best they could, in the hope of beating it, but he did not think they would. Their best was not very fast. Matt trotted in a pained shamble. A dark smear fanned across half his face, and his coat hung open, revealing his unlaced shirt, stuck to his chest by more drying blood. Sometimes he gingerly touched the thick wheel around his throat, nearly black now, growling under his breath, and he stumbled often, catching himself with the odd, black-hafted spear and clutching at his head. He did not complain, though, which was a bad sign. Matt was a great complainer at small discomforts. If he was silent now, it meant he was in real pain. The old, half-healed wound in Rand's side felt as though something were boring into it, and the gashes on his face and head burned. Yet, lumbering along, half-hunched over his aching side, he hardly thought of his own hurts. He was all too conscious of the sun rising behind him, and the Aiel waiting on the bare mountainside ahead. There was water and shade up there, and help for Matt. The rising sun behind, and the Aiel ahead. Dawn, and the Aiel. He who comes with the dawn. That Aes Sedai he had seen, or dreamed he had seen, before Rhuidean. She had spoken as if she had the foretelling. He will bind you together. He will take you back and destroy you. Words delivered like prophecy. Destroy them. Prophecy said he would break the world again. The idea horrified him. Perhaps he could escape that part, at least, but war, death, and destruction already welled up in his footsteps. Tyr was the first place, in what seemed a very long time, where he had not left chaos behind. Men dying and villages burning. He found himself wishing he could climb up on Jayadin and run as fast as the stallion could carry him. It was not the first time. But I can't run, he thought. I have to do it, because there isn't anybody else who can. I do it, or the Dark One wins. A hard bargain, but the only one there was. But why would I destroy the Aiel? How? That last thought chilled him. It was too much like accepting that he would, that he should. He did not want to harm the Aiel. Light, he said harshly. I don't want to destroy anybody. His mouth felt lined with dust again. Matt glanced at him silently. A wary look. I'm not mad yet, Rand thought grimly.
He's a little bit mad.
Yeah, totally.
Just a little bit.
I think the only thing that I really wanted to point out there is Rand's side wound.
Yeah. The fact that they just experienced a bubble of evil and it's causing him a massive amount of pain.
Much more than usual.
Yeah. So I do think that the pain is the bubble of evil effect.
The proximity to the kind of power that is left there. That make sense?
The evil of the Dark One is resonating with the side.
Yeah, when the wound in his side is near the dark force, they kind of resonate.
Totally.
And he can feel it.
Totally. And it's actually, he's fortunate it didn't actually break open this time. Must have been a small bubble? I don't know. I noticed that Matt is also clutching at his head because he's had all the memories shoved into him. So he's got this massive headache from basically having the holes in his head filled.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think of it that way. I was...
You thought it was from being hung?
Yes.
I'm sure that also causes a headache, yes. But I think it's mostly to do, because he talks about all the sharp, like it's very sharp in his brain and stuff like that. And I think it's very much the memories that are integrating themselves into his memories.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, if I like put a foot on one of my knees while I'm reading for an hour or something and you put that foot down, it's like really, really uncomfortable. I can't imagine what it would be like to be hung from that foot for a very long time.
Well, for 7 days, maybe?
And then you get that same feeling in your skull instead of in your foot, right? Be like blinding, probably.
I mean, I think that's why you don't have nerves in your brain.
I'm sure.
Your brain is nerves, so I totally am not right when I say that, but you don't have pain sensing nerves in your brain.
I kind of liked that Draconic Entity wrote, the Finns seem to enjoy inflicting pain, so they get to experience that sensation. I don't know if that's perfectly true in this instance, but I like thinking about it that way.
Yeah, they like extreme emotion and extreme sensations, and pain is definitely one of those.
Yeah.
And probably the easiest one to inflict on someone long term.
So Matt and Rand are climbing up out of the valley. Upslope, the Aiel were stirring in 3 camps. Oh, I also wanted to highlight, Rand has the thought, he needed people he could trust. People who followed from something besides fear of him.
Right. These are his loyal followers. We've seen what he gets in tier, and you just have to constantly micromanage those people. And he doesn't have the time to do that and win the war. He needs loyalty first.
Right.
So he can manage all of his other groups.
The perfect soldiers, almost.
Yeah. And I think we see that in Rand when he comes down from the mountain, that he understands that, like, he stops trying to micromanage things and just lets people be good and do what they must. I don't know. I feel like he changes his approach a little bit. He gets people to follow him down off the mountain just out of sheer force of personality and will versus browbeating them, which is what he has to do now.
But, of course, not all the Aiel will follow him.
Especially. Nice transition.
Right
nice transition.
Yeah.
Well done. Especially this guy here named Couladin, who comes running up and tries to kill Rand because his brother went in first and is clearly, well, tearing his own eyes out and then dying.
And I actually just put this together just as you were saying that, but so for Couladin's brother Moiraine, it is day 9.
Yes.
Which means if Muradin's not back in like a matter of hours, he's not ever coming back. Because we hear that from one of the wise ones, says it later.
I believe it's either Bear or Mies.
Yeah, in reference to Moiraine, when I think Rand asks about her and says, like, where's Moiraine? Is she back yet? And they're like, no, but she's got 2.5 days or so.
Mm-hmm. Because no one ever comes back after 10 days.
Never.
Never.
And yeah, Rand and Matt start climbing the hill, and Couladin seems to be one of the first person to see him. Presumably he's waiting there for his brother to return.
Right.
And starts screaming at Rand. What did you do to him? You must have killed him. And then essentially says, like, look, everyone, they both have, or they're coming back armed, and they raise their spears.
Well, first he tries to attack them. They only arm themselves after the first attack. Because he throws a spear and Rand brings his sword out.
Oh, right. And I mean, Matt is holding the spear.
Yes,
or
the Ashendari. But it's only after he throws his spear at them and Rand brings out the fire sword. The Couladin's like, look, sword! Yeah.
They're armed. They brought those weapons into Rhuidean, and they killed my brother, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
Even though no one was there to witness it, I'm sure this is true.
And so then all of Couladin's men throw their spear at Rand at the same time, and you get one of those Taviran perfect circles. I think we see it with fish at one point, where some guy stumbles and all the fish come out of the basket. And
oh, yeah, in the mud.
Circle. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that was in tier, just, I don't know, a quarter of a book ago.
Right. This is sort of the same thing with the spears here.
Proof, Couladin howled. They entered Rhuidean armed. It is forbidden. Look at the blood on them. They have murdered Moiraine. Even as he spoke, he hurled another spear, and this time it was one of a dozen. Rand flung himself aside, just conscious of Matt leaping the other way. Yet even before they hit the ground, the spears came together where Rand had been standing, bouncing off each other. Rolling to his feet, he found the spears all stuck in the stony ground, in a perfect circle surrounding the spot he had jumped from. For a moment, even Couladin seemed stunned to stillness. And then...
That was crazy.
Yeah. My first thought was, what would have happened if Rand had just stayed still? Would they just have landed in a circle around him? And I was like, no, because some would probably have had to pass through him. To
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they would have all collided right where he was, so they would have just like stabbed into him at the same spot, and then he would have died with 12 spears in his chest.
And then Bear freaks out.
The piece of Rhuidean, which we know is a remnant of the Way of the Leaf, because that's passed down from the Way of the Leaf to the Gen. The home of the Gen is Rhuidean. Don't kill someone in front of a Gen, because it's bad. So that's why you are not allowed to fight.
And more or less, she's like, Couladin, you've done this shit before, and I dare you to pick up a weapon now. I will make it so that even your own sept will hunt you like an animal.
I will excommunicate you from our society. Don't
forever.
Think about it forever. I mean, they're definitely breaking a lot of rules here, but that one, the piece of Rhuidean, seems like it's a big one. It's sort of, again, because it's tied to a lot of their values are tied to a corruption or an interpretation of the Way of the Leaf. Everything from not using a sword to the piece of Rhuidean to blacksmiths are sacred.
Right, or some remnant.
Mm-hmm. Some remnant or piece of the Way of the Leaf that's passed down through the ages. And
the next thing I have is when Bear says, she looks at Matt's spear and says, did he find that in Rhuidean? And then I have figured I would read quite a bit after that because it's Rand raising his arms and to an anticlimactic reception.
Yeah, I highlighted that with the note, Patrick will read this.
Obviously. It's too good. It's too good. It's too important. So this is Bear here. She grimaced at Matt's strange sword-bladed spear, muttering, did he find that in Rhuidean, boy? I was given it, old woman, Matt growled back hoarsely. I paid for it, and I mean to keep it. She sniffed. You both look as if you had rolled in knife grass. What? No, you can tell me later. Eyeing Rand's power-wrought sword, she shivered. Rid yourself of that, and show them the signs before that fool Couladin tries to whip them up again. With this temper on him, he would take his whole clan into outlawry without blinking. Quickly, for a moment he gaped at her. Signs? Then he remembered what Rhuarc had shown him once, the mark of a man who had survived Rhuidean. Letting the sword vanish, he unlaced his shirt cuff and pushed back the sleeve to his elbow. Around his forearm wound a shape like that on the dragon banner, a sinuous golden maned form, scaled in scarlet and gold. He expected it, of course, but it was still a shock. The thing looked like a part of his skin, as though that non-existent creature itself had settled into him. His arm felt no different, yet the scales sparkled in the sunlight like polished metal. It seemed, if he touched that golden mane atop his wrists, he would surely feel each hair. He thrust his arm into the air as soon as it was bare, high, so Couladin and his people could see. Mutters rose among the Shaido, and Couladin snarled wordlessly. The numbers around the granite outcrop were swelling as more Shaido came running from their tents. Rhuarc stood with Hearn, and his Jindo, a little upslope. They watched the Shaido warily, and Rand with an air of expectation. His uplifted arm did not lessen. Lan stood halfway between the two groups, hand resting on his sword hilt, face a thunderhead. Just as Rand began to realize the Aiel wanted something more, Egwene and the other three wise women reached him, scrambling down the mountain. The Aiel women looked out of countenance at having to hurry, and every bit as angry as Bear had been. Amis directed her glares at Couladin, while sun-haired Moiraine stared blamingly at Lan. Sienna? I forget. Keep wanting to just say Shauna.
Sienna.
Sienna just seemed ready to chew rocks. Egwene, with a scarf wrapped around her hair and spread over her shoulders, stared at Matt and him half in consternation and half as though she expected never to see them again. Fool man, Bear muttered. All of the signs. Tossing the water bag to Matt, she seized Rand's right arm and stripped back his sleeve, exposing a mirror twin of the creature on his left forearm. Her breath caught, then came out in a long sigh. She seemed balanced on a razor edge, between relief and apprehension. There was no mistaking it. She had hoped for the second marking, yet it made her afraid. Amis and the other two wise women echoed her sign, almost exactly. It was odd to see Aiel fearful. Rand almost laughed. Not that he was amused. Twice and twice shall he be marked. That was what the prophecies of the dragon said. A heron branded into each palm, and now these. One of the peculiar creatures, dragons, the prophecy called them, was supposed to be for remembrance lost. Rhuidean had certainly supplied that, the lost history of the Aiel's origins, and the other was for the price he must pay. How soon must I pay it, he wondered, and how many have to pay it with me? Others always had to, even when he tried to pay alone. Apprehensive or not, Bear did not pause before shoving that arm above his head too, proclaiming loudly, "Behold what was never seen before! Akara Karn has been chosen, a chief of chiefs, born of a maiden. He has come with the dawn from Rhuidean, according to prophecy, to unite the Aiel. The fulfillment of prophecy has begun."
First of all, when she says, "Show me the signs," she knows she's looking for 2 dragons right away. He doesn't see that. But
Rand doesn't seem to even know that the dragons are there. He's been wearing long sleeves the whole time.
yeah, he can't feel them at all. They haven't changed the feel of his arms.
Not a real tattoo.
Not a real, yeah, which is interesting.
Or maybe realer.
You can't feel your tattoos once they've healed, right?
Not after they've healed,
yeah,
no.
Right. So, and then the contradiction that we have is that when Min bonded Rand with the Warder Bond, she says that he can feel the tattoos on his arms and they hurt.
Huh.
And so I was just thinking about that, and it seems to be an actual plot hole that he says his arms don't feel any different, but she can feel she can feel the pain that they cause him. So, and it doesn't seem like he's like, oh, they don't hurt, but I can feel them, and we can dismiss that. He just can't feel them at all. He doesn't even realize they're there in this scene. His arms are no different.
He is also, he's mad now, and he's madder then when that happens. And because isn't there also, Randus has all kinds of wounds and things at that point?
Yeah, well, the ones she lists are the hair marks in each of his hand, which he can feel. The 2 dragons, which she says he can feel, and they hurt, but doesn't seem to match up. His side double wound. His eyes get burned, and he loses his hand from Semirog.
Oh, right.
And not to mention, I'm sure, the stress he's under probably causes some muscle pain and tension. Needs a massage every once in a while. Yeah,
I remember from that scene just very vaguely one of the women wonders how he's even standing. Or something along those lines, When they feel the pain that he's in, it's unbelievable to them.
Anyway, I just thought that was a bit of a plot hole that we get, that they say they hurt once later, but don't hurt now. And I don't really see any reason why they'd start hurting. Nah. And he never really talks about it. He's never because he talks about the pain he ignores in his side, a bunch of other kinds of pain that he ignores. He never ever complains about the pain of the dragons.
And of course, after that scene I just read, I'll read this one more line. The reactions of the other Aiel were nothing like what Rand envisioned. They just kind of all look down at the marks on his arms, and then they turn around and walk away. There's no cheering, there's no welcoming, it's just oh shit. And everybody leaves.
They've realized that's the end of their people and their way of life, and it is the breaking of the Aiel. It's the end of the world. It's hard to be excited about the end of the world.
Right. Soon a lot of them will be dead, and they know that.
Yeah, if they are able to survive at all. Because if Rand dies before the last battle, none of the Aiel will make it. So they have to do everything they can to keep him alive. Which is, when you think about it, all of the maidens and Aiel who sacrificed to keep him alive, in a way, is somewhat of a selfish thing. You can see it as self-interested, because if the prophecies say if Rand dies, not a single Aiel will survive. Yeah. So, and the Wise Ones are there to make sure they continue forward. Do we want to talk about the price? I think we talked about the prophecy before. The twice and twice shall he be marked.
Oh yeah, we must have gone over it before, but
right, once for remembrance lost, and he realizes that's for the memories in the columns.
Yeah, and all the Aiel clan chiefs get that for the remembrance that they regain.
But he gets the second one for the price he must pay. And I think I've speculated about this before, but I think that's on the hand that gets burned off. And so the hand is the price. And that's the hand is marked by a dragon.
Ferengi says his golden ticket.
Kind of.
That's dark. When you put it that way. That's interesting. I never really thought about it. Dissembling a little what you just said. the price he must pay is losing his arm.
I mean, also dying. But,
Yeah, I mean...
But I think the representation of the dragon in that prophecy is to the loss of a hand. And the loss of a hand is one of those things that part of the legends of I want to say Odin, right? Maybe so. I feel like losing a hand is one of those things that is pulled directly out of mythology. So Jordan knew he was going to do it to Rand very early on, even if he didn't know exactly how it was going to happen.
There's a lot of that.
Because we've had things like the axe and the iron.
There's Odin loses an eye.
Odin loses an eye. Doesn't...
And
the Fisher
and then
King.
stabs himself?
Sorry, that's right. The Fisher King is the one who is blinded and gets the wound in his side. Does he also lose a hand? I'm trying to remember my mythology.
I don't know the Fisher King story very well.
I actually know it mostly from the Robin Williams movie.
Oh, I should see that sometime. You've mentioned it before, but I don't think I've ever watched it.
Peak Robin Williams during his dramatic acting time. Yeah, it's a very odd film, but I enjoyed it a lot. I guess I watched it in high school. I haven't seen it since, so maybe my memory might not be great, but I do remember liking it a lot. And really sort of gave me the concept of what the Fisher King was. And that was about the time that I was reading the chess scene with Moiraine, where he's like talking about all the various characters, and the Fisher King is one of them. And that was a cool connection I made, from that movie to the chess piece that Moiraine was playing with.
And Rand finds out it's been 7 days, that Moiraine only has a little bit more time to return before that becomes impossible.
And the wise ones forbid him of speaking of what happened to Rhuidean. He's like, it is forbidden. He's like, yeah, I'm going to change that. I'm going to talk about it, turns out.
I'm the boss now.
Yeah. Oh, and here's one. Matt pressed the heel of his palm against his forehead. My brain is spinning. Which is, again, I think the memories in his head are just like, whoa. Like, he's getting all these memories integrating into his mind. He's sort of coming off the effects of that.
Yeah.
And we talked about that as they were coming out of the waste and facing the dragons. He talked about his headache as well. So
just gotta defrag that hard drive.
You know,
too many modifications.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That it could be dehydration, but he seems to be in particularly worse shape than Rand. I mean,
yeah. I mean, dehydration can do a lot of weird stuff too, and they're at this point where I think their lips are cracked and they're in pretty bad shape.
They are, but they also got a pretty decent dose of water both on the way in and on the way out, which neither of the women did. And
that's true.
They definitely didn't spend 7 days in their time in there.
I don't think so.
As far as they know, they spent 24 hours. They went in during the day and they came out at the dawn, and they thought it was 1 night when they came back out again.
Right. Instead, it was an entire week.
Yeah.
Ferengi's pointing out, and this is probably important to note, that Rand doesn't really notice when he's hungry or thirsty anymore.
The void does that to you. When you're in the void a lot, you don't notice your physical needs as much, and so it's very easy to disentangle yourself from what you're feeling.
Rauko is asking if the mist wall is what slowed time. Who knows? I mean, I think neither Matt nor Rand were actually in regular reality for most of that time.
Yeah.
And who knows what that would do.
Neither of the women, they're in the columns. They're in the rings. They're in the rings, not the columns.
Right. But,
and so, they very well could be in there for 7 days as well and not sense the time passing in the same way. After all, they lived thousands of lives.
Right.
And that took Rand and company months to do when going through the portal stones.
We don't know the exact function of the mist wall. It may have something to do with why you can't go to Rhuidean and Teleran Riyadh. Of course, it could be something totally different or something we never see. Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty clear that Rhuidean is warded in a lot of ways. You've got the Wisp Wall. It's separate in Teleran Riyadh. Does time move differently when you enter it? Possibly. That would be one way to preserve the buildings. Except it would seem that time would slow way down inside the mists if you did 1 day to 7. So maybe instead of 2,000 years, it's been 250 years in Rhuidean.
Yeah, maybe. It also seems to defend the city against the elements.
Sure. Not that there are a lot of elements in the waste.
Right, just, yeah.
Dust storms, maybe. And they do say there's no dust on anything, despite being in the middle of the waste when they go in. Matt's like, I told you it was Aviendha naked.
Yeah, when Rand learns that Aviendha and Moiraine, neither have returned from Rhuidean yet. Of course, he didn't even know that they left. Rand didn't.
No, because Brand and Matt went in before the women left.
Matt did see Aviendha, but he just kind of thought it was her.
Yeah, at a distance.
Yeah.
And so he asks for healing, and the Wise Ones say, yeah, we can't do that. We're not healers. We have very basic channeling skills.
Or, yeah, we don't know how to do that. And this is, I think, the first time that we hear that there are Wise Ones. So, like, the Wise Ones know that there are a few amongst them who can heal, but she says they're not here, and none of us can.
Right.
So we'll do what we can, but it's not with the power.
It'll be with herbs and Nynaeve-style medicine.
Yeah.
And this is the first time you hear that, like, women have different talents. Like, not everybody learns everything. I think that Jordan is starting to really nail down his magic system here a little bit.
Egwene attempts to explain it to Rand. So we see Lan still pissed because nobody told him where Moiraine was until it was too late.
Not only did they not tell him where she was, but they literally held him down with the power for all night while he was fighting to go to her.
I assumed it must have been with the power, but I thought it gave me a funny image of Melaine and Amis just sitting on Lan until sunset.
You think that would stop him? Not in a heartbeat. They have to have had to use the power on it.
Yeah, of course.
No way a couple of old women were holding him back.
Her small smile was a touch amused, a touch wry. Well, the next thing I have really is Rand discussing with Rhuarc, the Wise Ones. Lan is there. I think he's just listening. What he has to do next.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, Rand says, Rhuarc, can you send runners to all the clan chiefs to tell them? And he's like, I could. But it would take a month, essentially, for them all to... It would take weeks for them to hear the message, weeks for them to gather all their people, and then even more weeks for them to travel, in some cases 1,000 miles or more to get here.
And so he turns to the Wise One to ask them to circumvent that whole process, or at least cut it down by sending the messages in dreams rather than sending out runners.
Rhuarc suggests that you just send the Wise Ones through Teleran Riyadh.
And then they get a little bit into the prophecy. He will bind you together and destroy you, and just how that affects their perception of him. Like, we are going to lose the battles we have between each other. He's going to make us one people, but he's also going to destroy our way of life. And that's not a good thing for us.
Rand puts the pieces together about the Aiel War, and he kind of figures out here why that happened. Now that he knows, he saw the water sharing, in quotes, although he doesn't really understand until Rhuarc explains. I just kind of wanted to point out that Rhuarc says, send the Wise Ones to the clan chief's dreams, and it can be done in a night. And who is talking here? One of the Wise Ones says, that's not true. We can't do that in a night.
It'll take 3.
Right.
Actually, I don't know. I mean, I guess there must be a lot of clan chiefs that they're trying to summon. And I guess not every clan's got to have a Wise One. Are they going into the clan chief's dreams, or are they going to the other Wise Ones?
I believe, I don't have the line in front of me at the moment, but I believe it was both.
Both?
One of the Wise Ones explains that, like, we'll go into all of the chief's dreams and tell them what to do, and we'll also go into the, like, corresponding Wise Ones' dreams, so that when the chiefs wake up, their Wise Ones will be like, you remember that dream you had? Wasn't a dream.
And that's assuming they know they can find the dreams of all these people. It's very possible that, as we know, it's very hard to find a dream that you haven't found before. So if they haven't contacted all these people, they may have to do a lot of searching for the right dream to get a hold of.
Right, and it's not just the 13 chiefs of the clans. Or 12, I guess. Chiefs of the clans, it's all the chiefs, so they're the sept chiefs as well.
Right.
Kind of talked about this at some point, I think, when we were going to the Waste, that there's like, so Rhuarc's like the governor, and then the governor of a state, and then the Jindo, like this guy Hearn, who he's always hanging with, is like the mayor of Multnomah County, or Portland, Oregon. Like a substantial population, but only a small portion of the larger clan territory.
Nodding.
So there's hundreds maybe of people they have to track down, especially if you include all the wise ones, or many of them too. Hundreds and hundreds of dreams to visit. It made me wonder if they have like a list, that they have to go down and check off like each one so that you don't miss any.
These women don't forget. They know the name.
Exactly, Rauco. Rand is the president, and Rhuarc is a governor. Ern is a mayor.
Then what are the wise ones in that situation?
Like Congress or something? A separate power, Maybe Congress and the judicial system.
Sure.
It could be pretty difficult for just the chiefs to get anything done without the wise ones saying, like, yeah, sure, here are the resources to do it.
Yeah, they seem to make... It's funny that they make the rules, but they still allow the clans to fight and battle over things like water and food. But they seem to have a lot of sort of an almost layer of society that exists in peace across all the various clans.
Yeah.
It's like I like the idea that there's a church. So they're almost like a church level.
Sort of different
where there's
ways
like
of
a Catholic
looking at
church
it.
in every town, even if they're fighting each other.
Hey, when the states were new, there are quite a few instances of states going to war against each other over territory or resources and things.
That was before the United States was ratified, probably, back when they were territories.
And the federal government was very weak. They weren't more powerful, say, than a very rich state.
Right.
Just different.
You might say a chief of chiefs.
Right. I had a little bit to read here about the age lace and Rand kind of walking into the mind mess that we sometimes blunder into, where, like, is Rand
responsible for all of
is Rand
Third Age?
Not only responsible for making Dragonmount, but he made Dragonmount so that he could then be born on it? And if so, like, how far back does that weird loop go?
And Rand sort of gets that in his own head here and starts thinking about it.
Yeah. And this comes after, and I'll skip a bit here, but when Rand asks Rhuarc, what was the sharing of water? And Rhuarc's a little surprised. And he goes on to explain, and Rand's response is, Cairhien, Rand said. You're talking about Cairhien, and Avendoral Dara, and Laman cutting down the tree. Laman is dead for his punishment, Rhuarc said in a flat voice. The Oathbreakers are done with. He looked at Rand sideways. Some, such as Couladin, take it for proof that we can trust no one who is not Aiel. That is part of why he hates you, a part of it. He will take your face in blood for lies, or claim he does. Rand shook his head. Moiraine sometimes talked of the complexity of age lace, the pattern of an age, woven by the wheel of time from the thread of human lives. If the ancestors of the Cairhien had not allowed the Aiel to have water 3,000 years ago, then Cairhien would never have been given the right to use the silk path across the waste, with a cutting from Aviendha for a pledge. No pledge, and King Laman would have had no tree to cut down. There would have been no Aiel war, and he could not have been born on the side of Dragonmount, to be carried off and raised in the two rivers. How many more points like that had there been, where a single decision, one way or another, affected the weave of the pattern for thousands of years? 1,000 times 1,000, tiny branching points, 1,000 times that many, all twitching the pattern into a different design. He himself was a walking branching point, and maybe Mat and Perrin too. What they did, or did not do, would set ripples ahead through the years, through the ages. And that kind of demonstrates what I was talking about with Rand and the Luz Theron connection, but in this case, Rand is thinking about if the predecessors of the Cairhienan state had never given the Aiel water, then could he have even been born?
Not the way he was. No.
Yeah.
Not on Dragonmount. No, I mean, well, and probably Aiel would have died. That's part of the problem, is they wouldn't have survived.
Right,
no
Janduin.
Yeah, no Janduin, no place for Tigraine to go and be rescued.
There wouldn't be people there, or not very many.
Not the way the Aiel are. Rand here says, I have to carry the load, whatever the cost, and that just makes me think of Lord of the Rings, where he's like, share the load.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know why. That just brings up a Lord of the Rings reference in my head when I read that sentence.
I kind of liked here in Rand's thoughts. I actually didn't highlight this at first, but he just has the thought like the creator could not have been thinking to set the future on the shoulders of 3 farm boys. What were you thinking? Matt, really?
Really?
He's
one of the pillars of the tripod? Oh my god.
What
All
are
right.
you doing?
Fine. But only his brand of irreverence could ever have gotten him into and out of the situations that he needed to get into and out of to survive.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's the little things, like Rand was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, the causality that loops around to create the dragon reborn into a new person who can have his memories is kind of crazy. The coincidences. I love the way that circles around. It's very much, you have to wonder about cause and effect. And one of the things about Randland and the Wheel of Time that I think Robert Jordan thought about a lot because he was into physics is causality.
Right.
Especially with Balefire and the Balefire Scream. The fact that you can affect things in the past and the causality can move backwards in time, and maybe is it moving backwards in time, or is it just going around the wheel one more time and actually going forward in time?
Totally. And they're, in this little snippet that I just read here, and we talk about this kind of thing all the time, like sometimes the cause creates an effect, which is a cause that creates another effect that begins the first cause. And so that there's this weird cyclical, there's no answer, like there is no beginning.
Right. I mean, time is the wheel
like
of
cute, but
time, right?
Yeah.
It's the central idea behind the books, that there is always causality, but because time is a circle, there's no beginning or ending to that causality. So it's a pretty cool concept, and really, I spent a little while today watching physics videos about why the speed of light is limited and why is it that specific number. And now my head hurts, and I'm thinking a lot about causality and the speed of causality, and how that makes time work forward rather than backwards and stuff like that. If you ever want to make your head hurt, go look at like causality videos and the speed of causality.
The only thing I had like pretty much for the next page is Amis giving Matt tea and being like, "Here, this is medicine. It'll help your head and your pain." And Matt says, "Thank you, wise one. I won't ask you if you added anything to give it that memorable taste." And the Baron Sienna? I'm never going to get it right. Jesus, yeah.
Think of it like the
never going to get it right.
Not an S. Or John
Gotcha.
Sienna. John Sienna. Anyway.
Baron Sienna laughed softly, and they're not sure why. Like, because they did make it taste bad because he's a little jerk, or because they didn't make it taste bad but he thinks it did. And
right, either one could very much be true, yeah.
Yeah.
We know Nynaeve likes to do that, so maybe that's just from being around Nynaeve a little too much, because she always makes her medicines taste bad if she thinks you are taking the medicine because you've behaved badly.
This is, after that, is when Rand is asking Rhuarc, how do I get ahead of Couladin? How do I start assembling the clan chiefs?
I like when he says, in the stories, blah, 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 when someone fills a prophecy, there is none of this, like, turning around and muttering. And he's like, it's just, behold, I've succeeded.
Rand's like, so what's the protocol for this? And he's like, nope, it's never happened before and will never again. There is no protocol. I don't know. No one knows.
Totally. And I really like it because it is a little bit of breaking the fourth wall of Jordan being like, this is not a typical story.
Yeah.
It's really, even though this is a story, right? Obviously, this didn't actually happen. Oh, it hurts me to say that, but no, this is a fictional novel, sadly. But it's Jordan saying this isn't a story.
Right.
This isn't going to have a happy ending necessarily.
I liked that Margot just pointed out how the characters in the story are talking about how this isn't like the stories all the time.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't what we heard about. This isn't how it goes.
That's how it's supposed to go.
You're right. It creates almost like enough self-awareness in the characters that it starts making this story feel more real, because when the characters are in it are talking about, there we go, another weird cyclical thing.
Totally. And also Robert Jordan being like, I don't write like the way most authors do.
Yeah.
I'm better than they are.
Like, this isn't like the stories. And then Brigida comes back and she's like, no, yeah, that's what happened, though. I was there in the stories.
Stories are mostly just trying to find a place to eat and sleep and hoping nobody kills you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Perrin. They make him strip down so they can heal him, and they'll heal him to rub ointment in the cuts. Antiseptic, antibiotic, whatever it is, it stings like a mother.
I figure, yeah, some kind of antibiotic or like a astringent plant or something. Read about in pre-penicillin, people had like certain plant products that you could rub in a wound and it would make it inhospitable for bacteria to grow there, but not as effective as penicillin, obviously.
Sure. We go a little bit into the side wound. We talk about that a little more. Well, I think we've gone into that in detail, which is to say it probably hurts because of the bubble of evil. Yeah. They give Matt something for his head, which is probably just, silverleaf, Timson root, who knows? I don't have real world equivalents for those, but I'm thinking willow bark, basically.
Right. It was,
Advil.
Yeah. Drink some water, have a couple ibuprofen, go to bed.
No, I'll call you in the morning.
Yeah. And I think this is something I actually didn't catch in my previous read-throughs. But Rhuarc is saying, when he says, no, there's no protocol for this. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but there are places that are like Rhuidean but aren't Rhuidean. Gathering places,
Meeting places, yeah.
And one of them, which is nearby, is called Alcaerdal, the Golden Bowl. And Rhuarc's like, yeah, it's not gold. I don't know what that's about, but it's a bowl.
Isn't the gold all about the way the sound travels? So you can stand in that one spot and just like yell or whisper and everybody can hear you?
I can't remember now. Did it have something to do with like the way the light hits it or something?
Oh, is the light of sunset? Okay.
I'll look it up really quick. I don't remember. It's been quite a while since I read that. It's just a natural amphitheater. That's all.
But yeah, sort of like the red rocks in Colorado where the light of the sunset reflects in the rocks, and that gives you the name.
And as a super famous natural, concert hall? It's like an outdoor, everybody always wants to go see their favorite band at the Red Rocks. I think it's like a natural amphitheater.
Dave Matthews Live at Red Rocks is one of their famous albums. That's where I first heard about it.
I just know it's a really famous venue. I've never been there.
But think of Alcaerdal as like the best venue you've ever been to. He's like, dude, let's get together at the Superdome. Wednesday, the Caracarn will rock your world.
Weep for your salvation.
Weep for your salvation. Extreme.
But yeah, there's just like huge like pieces of earth crust sticking out, and I could see how it would make a naturally good sounding and beautiful place.
The next thing I really had is the story of Rand's parents.
Yeah, he asks one of the wise ones, he says, you knew my mother, didn't you? Or something like that.
Mm-hmm. You knew my mother, he said. Tell me about her, please. And then there's another section that I have for, I don't know if you want to read it or not, but the story of how Tigraine came to the Waste and was adopted into the Maidens of the Spear, where she then fell in love with the Tardad Aiel clan chief.
Janduin,
sorry, thank you. And how they had a child during the War of Laman Sin. Mm-hmm. And 3 years into that, well, they don't call it a war, but 3 years into that war was the Battle of the Blood Snow, where she died. And he assumed that Rand was lost as well as a baby.
Yeah, I didn't. It's a longish story that I feel like we touch on quite a bit when we're talking about Slayer and even Lan, and like that has a lot of connections to things.
Right, yeah, I guess the points I wanted to take away is that we know that Shael is actually Tigraine.
Right.
We know Janduin was killed by Lord Luke in the Waste, and the reason he didn't raise he looks like Shael because they're brother and sister. So he was essentially killed by his wife's brother.
Right. I'll read this little part. It's kind of toward the end of her explanation of like Shael's life and what she knows before they get to Janduin and talk about him a little bit. Shael, Bear said, was the name she took for herself. She never gave another name that in the time that I knew her. In the old tongue, it would mean the woman who is dedicated. Matt nodded agreement. not seeming to realize what he had done. Lan eyed him thoughtfully over a silver cup of water. There was a bitterness in Aiel in the beginning, she finished. Sitting back on her heels beside Rand, Amis nodded. She spoke of a child, abandoned, a son she loved. Right, a husband she did not love. Where, she would not say. I do not think she ever forgave herself for leaving the child. She would tell little beyond what she had to. It was for us that she had been searching, for the Maidens of the Spear. And she goes on to say, Tigraine heard the prophecy from Ch34, and then she abandoned her family, walked halfway across the world to go become a Maiden of the Spear, where Bear even says outright, a 10-year-old Aiel girl could have kicked her ass when she got here.
And Ch34 is a pretty important person in the Prophecies of the Dragon, because obviously she not only sent Luke to the Waste and Tigraine over to the Waste, but she was also the one who proclaimed Rand's birth and then died in front of Moiraine and Suan. So the fact that Moiraine and Suan are actually searching for him is entirely due to Ch34's prophecy.
Right.
So a lot of Rand's life has been affected by the foretelling that Ch34 came up with.
She had, there were several really important foretellings that were just from her that kind of changed the course of the world.
I think just those two, as far as I know.
Wasn't also Lord Luke?
It was the same prophecy.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was. Lord Luke went to the Waste at the same time that Aiel went. Sorry, Lord Luke went to the Blight at the same time Aiel went to the Waste.
Right.
Same prophecy, I think. And it's you have to go, or else the world will be destroyed. Which is basically you have to go, or else the Dragon Reborn won't be born, and we're screwed.
Yeah.
Less so with Lord Luke. That one was a little odd to me.
For some reason, Slayer has to happen so that other events can occur. Well, I want to just say outright that I really don't understand that plot line well enough. I feel like Slayer is difficult to understand, especially considering it's not one man, it's two.
I'm thinking more the absence of Luke in Andor was what was important, more so than his presence in the Blight.
Okay.
Because if he stayed around, he would, maybe he could be, because he would be the eldest male child of the missing queen, so maybe he could be there would be a king of Camelin next, and that could cause all sorts of issues, since we know Lord Luke is a freaking psychopath. So, now, how much of that is him going to the Blight?
Yeah, or have tracked down Tigraine.
Rand's father goes to the Blight because he let his wife and daughter be lost in battle, and there he is killed by a man who he won't attack because it looks like his wife.
Right.
What was Tigraine's husband's name? Tarangale. So technically she was married twice at the same time. She never really divorced him. Just saying.
Oh, I just noticed something that I wanted to point out quickly. As Bear is talking about Aiel or Tigraine, or Tigraine, however you'd like to say it.
I think Tigraine is correct, but I've got Tigraine stuck in my brain.
Yeah, we looked it up a while back, and it's Tigraine, but that sounds too much like a food product, and and I just whatever.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to point out, and I never really picked up this before, and it's kind of a throwaway line, but Bear says she knew the bow very well, but she had never run a mile in her life or had picked up a spear or any of that. And I just thought that was kind of an interesting fact that this Andorian woman knew how to shoot a bow well.
Yeah, interesting point that she was trained well in the bow.
Yeah.
No. I also think of them as kind of a power couple. You have the Queen of Andor and one of the most powerful clan chiefs hooking up, and she's just determined major power couple going on there. Pretty much do whatever the hell they want. And do you think she was a channeler? I mean, we know she was trained in the tower, as tradition would dictate.
That's true, but all, I think, young...
The daughter heirs are always trained.
Right, whether or not they can channel.
Yeah.
Which is probably, for instance, the only reason Morghese knows that she can channel sometimes and badly.
Interestingly enough, Morghese didn't go to the tower as the daughter heir.
Oh, right, she was just... because she was
She's just an important noble
in the
at that
royal
point.
line. Yeah,
until Tigraine disappeared, which was much later in her life. She actually didn't go. So that was actually, I wonder if that was also a bit of a, it was as a seat for Trakand, obviously, but
Yeah, I don't believe Tigraine could and I mean, if Tigraine had showed up in the Waste as a woman who could channel, she wouldn't have been allowed to become a maiden.
That's true. She would have been a wise one.
But I do kind of feel like it's important to point out that in these royal lines, there is a pretty strong penchant for channeling.
Yes.
That it's there, even if it's only latent. So, like, at least one of Tigraine's children became a channeler.
Here's a question for you. Did Juan-Din have any family? I mean, he's from the Tardad Aiel. How closely?
Oh, you mean any
Aiel family?
Other than Rand?
Other, like, brothers or sisters? Like, was he an only child? Did he have parents? Like, does Rand have family in the Tardad Aiel?
Does Rand have some Aiel cousins running around? Probably.
I would think. Is Aviendha actually his cousin?
Oh, gosh.
I'm just saying, like, you could make a claim that they might actually be related. He's all concerned about being related to Elaine, but we never hear about anything about his relations among the Aiel and who he's related to among the Aiel, because Juan-Din didn't come out of nowhere, and he was part of the Tardad. The thought occurred to me that he was, like, all concerned about the fact that he had a half-brother that was left behind, but he doesn't even consider the family of the Aiel that he may be related to.
Yeah.
No, and I admit that it's highly unlikely that he's actually cousins with Aviendha, but we just don't even think about it.
It's funny to speculate.
Yeah. It's the first time I've ever had that thought that, like, Rand probably has family among the Aiel. Relatively close family.
I'm just looking around online a little bit. It's nothing like that is ever mentioned, but
no.
Yeah, surely there are some Aiel who are loosely related to Rand. I don't see how Janduin, unless he was, like, the only son of, but even then, you know, there must be some distant relations scattered around.
And we know that Juan-Din actually led the Aiel on the attack against Layman. So he probably was the one who, we speculated that Tam killed Layman, but
as much as we would like it.
And then we're like, but actually it's probably much more likely that Juan-Din was the one who killed him as the leader of the people who sought his blood. But either way, one of Rand's fathers killed him. We'll just leave it at that.
Janduin and Shail went together. And the reason Janduin went to the Blight to hunt, trying to remember the Aiel terminology for the Dark One, but Janduin went to the Blight to hunt the Dark One is because, Sightblinder, thank you, Mackenzie, is because he let his wife go across the Dragon Wall as a warrior when technically it was illegal, but he had a position of authority and he overlooked it, and he was, one of those guys that can't say no to his wife, and she insists, so, and then she dies, and the kid is lost, and he can't live with himself, because he could have just made her stay.
I like to point out that her name, Shail, is just she and Aiel merged together. So it's the word she Aiel,
I spent a moment thinking about that because we find out that Shail means the woman who is dedicated or dedicated woman, and we know Aiel means dedicated.
Right.
Which means that woman means sh, or sh means woman?
Yeah. Or it's a prefix that adds the feminine to it.
Okay, I like that. Sh is a prefix.
Yeah.
Female dedicated.
I like the idea that Rhuarc might actually be Rand's uncle, because we do know that clan chiefs are generally, stick within the families, right? When one family member dies, when Couladin's brother dies, Couladin goes in, or attempts to go in. It seems like they let family members try first.
Yeah.
And so it makes a lot of sense that when Juan-Din died, that Rhuarc was either the next clan chief or maybe the one after that, but he could very well be one of his families, which would maybe make him Rand's actual uncle or cousin.
Or something. Now I'm curious. I'm looking at his page.
But again, this is total speculation because I don't think there's anything about his family, the Aiel, in the books. But I'm sort of headcanoning that Rhuarc is actually Rand's uncle.
Rhuarc was born in 974, so he's about... Wait, can that be right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no. I'm reading that wrong. I'm sorry. I'm reading this line. His daughters are said to be as old as Berlain, who was born in 974.
Okay.
So Berlain is 25, and Rhuarc has kids around her age, so he's probably like 40 or something ish. I don't see a date for I don't see his actual birth date here.
If 74, let's say he was 20-ish when his kids were born. So that would put him at 54. And we're now 99, so you're talking 40, 44 years, 45 years old?
Around, like, Lan and Moiraine's age.
Yeah, exactly. And that means 20 years ago, he would have been the perfect age. He would have been, like, 25, which is, like, just the right age to start off as a clan chief of the Tardad after Juandin disappears into the Blight. Do we have any idea when he became a clan chief? How long he's been a clan chief?
No, but I don't see anything about that here, but I liked what you had to say there because we also find out from, I believe Bear is still telling the story, or it's one of the wise ones that says Janduin was so heartbroken that he told, like, the proper people, he was like, listen, I don't want to be a clan chief anymore, like, I'm going to go hunt Sightblinder, and they were like, there's no precedence for that, I don't think you can do that, and then he just left.
You can't just resign as clan chief.
Yeah, you can't resign. And he's like, yeah, well, good luck having that argument alone.
Talk to my dust.
Yeah. And we also just got the kind of world-building drop that Rhuarc says to Hearn when he arrives at Rhuidean, and Hearn is standing there. He's like, what, did you think I was dead? Because Hearn is one of the Sept chiefs. So, like, you have to go from mayor to governor. You can't just, I don't think you can just skip. You know what I mean? So maybe Rhuarc was a Sept chief when Janduin disappeared, and then that's when you go to Rhuidean. Someone has to fill that gap, fill that position from, I think, among the Sept chiefs. So he would have been a young leader.
You know, that's the question. Like, I'm guessing anyone could ask the wise ones to go.
I guess so, yeah. They have to approve you.
They have to approve. So, you know, they probably are pretty strict about who they would let in.
That is very women's circle-y, isn't it?
It's very
like,
women's
yeah,
circle.
You can run stuff if we let you. With our approval.
Yeah.
You can pretend to run things.
Yeah, and they want to make Gaul a clan chief. He's like, not so sure about that. That seems like not a great deal.
Yeah, I think I'll just fight in the last battle, then we'll talk.
They definitely encourage or discourage people to try to become clan chiefs.
Ferengi says Gaul has Gaul. I always think that, and I am 100% sure, or 100% believe, I should say, that RJ does that stuff on purpose.
Oh, the names? Yeah. The names, I mean...
Gaul has Gaul.
And he doesn't like Bane, his Bane.
First part of it starts with Rand refused a midday meal. But then there's like a little bit of a break and then the readout.
Yeah,
I
think he's been suffering a little bit of depression.
Rand?
Yeah, that's why he's not. I can't think of any other reason why he wouldn't want to eat.
Maybe just like anxiety and, you know, he's overwhelmed. And I know if I'm like nervous or afraid or even just miserable, the last thing I want to do is eat. I just feel nauseous when I think about food.
Whenever I start a new job, I have trouble eating for a couple of days just because my stomach's constantly in knots. Doesn't matter if I'm doing well or not. It's just like you're constantly thinking about all the various things that you have to do, and you just don't have time to let your body be hungry.
That's the hardest part of starting something new like that. You don't even know if you're doing a good job.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know.
You're like, yeah, they're saying I'm doing a good job, but are they just being nice? I don't know, you know. It's stressful.
But yeah, let me just... I might interrupt occasionally to say something, but go ahead.
Yeah, go for it. Refused a midday meal, too, meaning Matt had it as well. Though Egwene and the Wise Ones took turns trying to make him eat, they seemed to take his refusal calmly enough. But when he suggested returning to Rhuidean to look for Moiraine, and Aviendha for that matter, Moiraine exploded. You fool man! No one can go twice to Rhuidean. Even you would not come back alive. Oh, starve if you want to. She threw half a round loaf of bread at his head. Matt caught it out of the air and calmly began eating.
So I think it doesn't refer to Matt, but he didn't take an earlier meal either.
Right,
So he didn't eat breakfast or lunch.
Why do you want me to live? Rand asked her. You know what that Aes Sedai said in front of Rhuidean. I will destroy you. Why aren't you plotting with Couladin to kill me? Matt choked, and Egwene planted her fists on her hips, ready to lecture, but Rand kept his attention on Moiraine. Instead of answering, she glared at him and left the tent. It was Bear who spoke. Everyone thinks they know the prophecy of Rhuidean, but what they know is what wise ones and clan chiefs have told them for generations. Not lies, but not the whole truth. The truth might break the strongest man. What is the whole truth? Rand insisted. She glanced at Matt, then said, in this case, the whole truth, the truth known only to wise ones and clan chiefs before this, is that you are our doom and our salvation. Without you, no one of our people will live beyond the last battle, perhaps not even until the last battle. That is prophecy and truth. With you? And then it looks like she's quoting, he shall spill out the blood of those who call themselves Aiel as water on sand, and he shall break them as dried twigs. Yet the remnant of a remnant shall he save, and they shall live.
That's such a the driving force behind everything the wise ones and the Aiel are doing, which is we have to save Rand, and we have to make that remnant of a remnant as big as possible. Because right now, honestly, I think they are currently a remnant, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are a remnant of the old Aiel. And then what's left after the battle is the remnant of a remnant.
Yeah, and we'll see them talk about this a little bit, and them, by them, I mean the wise ones. See them talk about this a little bit in the next chapter, a little bit here, but quite a bit later as well. Part of their reasoning for making Aviendha be his cultural translator and kind of keep an eyeball on him is to teach him about the Aiel so that he doesn't destroy more than he does, and perhaps even, or more than he has to, and perhaps even he will come to love our people and our culture.
And just see them as people, not as tools.
And he does quite literally come to love the people and the culture in Aviendha, and Aviendha goes on to have his kids. So there's a remnant right there.
Right.
that will be saved.
It really is just making him see them as people and not as a spear. And that's an interesting, then I start thinking about the Algai de Siswai, the Aiel that wear the headbands with the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai on it. Basically the dragon banner. Not the dragon banner, but the dragon's banner. And so they have basically said, I am nothing but a spear, right? You can break me. Yeah, the banner of light, I guess is what it's called. Yeah, but this is why I'm on. It's essentially saying we are the tools. But the wise ones are like, we don't want him to see us that way. Because when the tool breaks, you just get another one. You don't mourn it, we need him to care about us if we're going to survive.
In the mid-afternoon, he finally spotted a figure climbing the mountain, scrambling up wearily. Aviendha. Matt had been right. She was bare as she was born, and showing some effects of the sun, too. Aiel or not, it was only her hands and face that were sun-darkened. The rest of her looked decidedly red. He was glad to see her. She disliked him, but only because she thought he had mistreated Elaine. The simplest motives. Not for prophecy or doom, not for the dragons on his arms or because he was the dragon reborn. For a simple human reason. He almost looked forward to those cool, challenging stares. When she saw him, she froze, and there was nothing cool in her blue-green eyes. Her gaze made the sun seem cold. He should have been burned to ash on the spot. Rand? Matt said quietly. I don't think I would turn my back on her if I were you. A tired sigh escaped him. Of course, as she had been into those glass columns, she knew. Bear, Moiraine, the others, they had all had years to grow used to it. For Aviendha, it was a fresh wound with no scab.
And I want to point out that he is extremely wrong there. She didn't go into the glass columns. She has no idea what the prophecy of Rhuidean is. And honestly, this read-through was the first time I ever caught that. I was like, oh yeah, she went into the columns, of course. No, she went into the rings. She hasn't seen anything about what happened in the past. What she saw was her own potential futures, which most likely include getting together with Rand, almost inevitably, and she is not happy about that.
Which is why when the Wise Ones sick her on him in the next chapter, she's so resistant. Probably, and I'm assuming what you're saying, I'm kind of distilling it, but probably because she's seen herself become friends with Elaine, who's into this guy, and then she's...
Well, and her honor demands that she protect him. Yeah.
Starts hanging out with him, and then she steals her friend's boyfriend, essentially.
Right. And that violates all sorts of GE Toe. because she's promised Elaine to take care of him, and then she goes into the columns and realizes, oh, I'm going to fall in love with this guy and sleep with him.
Not take care of him that well.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, shit, he is totally putting me in this situation where I have these two types of toe. And I think one time she says, killing myself will solve one, but not the other, and killing Elaine will solve the other, but not one. And so I can't kill both of us. And she's like, I don't know what to do, like, and of course, the answer is become first sisters with Elaine and share him. Was it killing him or herself? That if she killed him, it would lessen her shame, and if she killed Elaine, or killed herself, it would lessen Elaine's shame. I don't remember exactly what the
when Elaine is talking about Bearlane, Aviendha's like, why don't you just kill her? Be done with it. It's like, why argue? Or make an alliance. These are the two options that you have. You can make an alliance with her, or you could just murder her, which is essentially what I think Aviendha is thinking in that moment. She's thinking that because she wants Rand, she should kill Elaine, but to repay Elaine, that she'd have to kill herself.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
For
Aviendha, it was a fresh wound with no scab. No wonder she hates me now, Rand thinks.
You're wrong.
The wise ones scurried out to meet Aviendha, hurrying her away into another tent. The next time Rand saw her, she wore a bulky brown skirt and loose white blouse, with a shawl looped around her arms. She did not look very happy about the clothes. She saw him watching, and the fury on her face, the sheer animal rage, was enough to make him turn away. Shadows were beginning to stretch to the far mountains by the time Moiraine appeared, falling and staggering back to her feet as she climbed. As sunburned as Aviendha, he was startled to see she had no clothes on either. Women were crazy. That was all. Lan leapt from the stone outcrop and ran down to her, scooping her into his arms. He ran back up slope, perhaps faster than he had descended, cursing and shouting for the wise ones by turns. Moraine's head lolled on his shoulder. The wise ones came out to take her, Moiraine physically barring his way when he tried to follow them into the tent. Lan was left stalking up and down outside, pounding a fist into his hand. Rand rolled onto his back and stared up at the low tent roof. 3 days saved. He should have felt glad Moiraine and Aviendha were back and safe, but his relief was all for days saved. Time was everything. He had to be able to choose his own ground. Maybe he still could. "What are you going to do now?" Matt asked. "Something you should like. I'm going to break the rules." "I meant, are you going to get something to eat? 'Cause I'm hungry." In spite of himself, Rand laughed. Something to eat? He did not care if he ever ate again. Matt stared at him as if he were crazy, and that only made him laugh harder. Not crazy. For the first time, somebody was going to learn what it meant that he was the Dragon Reborn. He was going to break the rules in a way no one expected.
What specifically do you think he's referring to there when he says he's going to break the rules in a way that no one suspected?
I don't know. He's going to go to Rhuidean. Is that what he's thinking?
I was spent a while thinking about it, and I don't know what reference. Morgaine says just bringing the Aiel over the Dragon Wall, and I guess that's...
I don't think that's true. I don't think he knows that he's going to do that yet, though. Because he...
Oh, I mean, that's the whole point of going there, is to get the Aiel.
I thought it was to chase Couladin. To go execute Couladin, right? Because they chase him over the Dragon Wall.
Well, it does make him fast. That does ruin his plan. You're right. Because he has to chase him down. I feel like it's a plan that ends up being discarded. And so that's why we can't remember what it is. But I just had that idea of I don't really know, because he ends up going to the Golden Bowl, and then Couladin declares his thing, and then we have the whole confrontation between Couladin and Rand. The only thing I can think of is that he has formed the plan to capture Asmodean, and that it's just totally unexpected that he would capture a Forsaken to teach him. That's my long rambling way of coming about that theory.
Does he know that Asmodean is there?
No, but he does say he puts himself in a situation where he expected the Forsaken to come for him. And so maybe he's basically setting a trap for them. By fleeing into the waste, he sort of predicted that someone's going to come after him. He wasn't sure who, but certainly this is where I really do think the plan to capture Asmodean forms when he sees Lanfear and Asmodean in his dream, and he wakes up and is like, oh, that's who's hanging out. So I do feel like this is a little bit early. So I don't know. I'm having trouble coming down on one side or the other on exactly what his plan is that no one expects. The Spanish Inquisition? But that's really the White Cloak's plan, so I don't really know the questioners.
Nobody expects. Not the comfy chair.
Yeah, so I'm guessing he's just planned for Lanfear and the Dark Friends to follow him. Moiraine has a good point that he's not surprised when the peddlers show up, just how quickly they get there. Which makes me wonder if they went through a gateway. As I tend to do infrequently, or should I say not frequently enough, I have some patrons to thank. I know we've been experimenting with ads, but the reality is the patron support is really what is keeping us going and keeping us afloat, and I really, really, really want to thank everybody out there who has continued to provide both financial and all sorts of other kinds of support, including like materials and just help in all our other projects. So I'm going to start back on December 1st. I think that gives me everybody, but if I missed you, please let me know. On December 1st, which is my birthday, $3 was pledged by Drake Miller. Kelsey Maxwell upped her pledge. Thanks, Kelsey. $5 by Alan Dawson. Sarah K.L. Wilson pledged. Carrie Warren pledged. Chandler Jensen Cody pledged. You guys are awesome. Jace Marin. Matthew Brennan. Charlie Carlson. Ooh, here's one. Caterari? You think that one's made up?
Well, thank you, Caterari.
Stephanie Fuqua.
Thank you, Steph.
Daryl Tedstone. Thank you, Daryl. Justin Hauser.
We appreciate you, Justin and Daryl.
Anlis Amaro. A-N-A-L-I-S. Analis?
Analyst.
Analis. Michael Brodzik.
Thank you, Michael.
Jamie Greenway. Colin Fegan.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, everybody. Skylar Ray. Just Dan. And that gets us through December. And then we'll come up to January.
All of you guys are awesome.
So, in January, we have another large group of people. Brian Malick. James Skinner. Thank you, Talir.
Thank you, folks.
Harrison T. Lucas Sweat. That's an A-D-L-E-O-P-O-L-D. Adelopold? It's all caps. Chenny Billing. Anthony Chenny. Thank you, Anthony. That was generous. Sukriti Sharma.
Sukriti?
Sukriti? Sure.
We struggle with this every time. We love all you, regardless of our terrible pronunciations.
Names are hard. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Shane Colton Hudson. DT, thank you very much, buddy.
Appreciate you, as always.
Grand Olds.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you, Grant. Grant Olds, got it. Colin Wright. A.D. Falcon.
Thanks. Ad Falcon?
Ad Falcon.
Erin?
Erin Dibadal. Erin Dibadal.
Erin?
Erin. E-I-R-I-N. Abigail DeWelt. Howard Davis. Inchotas.
Inchoates?
Inchoates?
Guessing.
Paul, thank you very much, Paul. Dan, thanks for upping it. Just Dan, again. We pledged and then upped. And Cody Kilbrew pledged just yesterday. So
thank you, Kilbrew.
Thank you. Guys, long list as always. Your generosity, every time I do this, astounds me. You really are just the most wonderful fan base I think anyone could ever have. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't even know really what to say anymore. It's always kind of overwhelming to just acknowledge the amount of people that are supporting us. And now we feel like we have a group of people that we are responsible to create content for, which keeps us going.
Sure does. Keeps me getting out of bed in the morning. Well, in the afternoon anyway.
At some point.
At some point. Listen, I'm working till fucking 3:30 in the morning. It's not like my schedule's shifted a little bit these days. I've been staying up late every night to try and get ready for it. So I've been like trying to stay up till 2, 3 in the morning. Because like that first night, it was like 1 o'clock, and I was starting to just fall asleep on my feet because I was getting tired at the end of the night. I had to push through that, get my second wind.
Yeah.
Coming up on episode 200, guys. I don't know if we want to do anything special for that episode other than to be like, yay, 200. But, 200 is a pretty big milestone for podcasts. 100 is definitely a bigger milestone, but, like, there's not a lot of podcasts out there that hit 200 episodes.
Yeah. I'm creeping up on 300 total patrons as well, which is another impressive number.
Yeah.
We may have actually surpassed it. I'm not actually sure, but between Mistborn and Watt...
there is some overlap there, so it's hard to... Some people donate to both.
Yeah.
Which is the other reason why we're considering consolidating that, and so we only have one patron, because there are people who give to both, and then like there's more fees and stuff, and they're not giving us as much money as if they just put both in there. So, but yeah, we're at 274 patrons there in Watt, and then probably... Actually, I haven't looked at Mistborn in a bit. So, and for the fact that we have, anywhere from 1,600 regular listeners, that such a large portion of them are giving, we've got probably 20% of our listeners give, which is just an astounding number when it comes to percentages. Like, no one else I've listened to comes anywhere close when they talk about, like, how many people donate. So... you guys are an amazing fan base. I know you give way more and way more generously than almost any other fan base out there. And so thank you. That's
absolutely true. And yes, thank you all again. If you've been a long-time donor, we may not have even mentioned your name in a long time, but you know who you are.
No, some people have given for such a long time that it's added up to a very significant amount of money. So thank you so much. It's wonderful for us.
That's sweet of you to say, Ferengi, but... who's saying we've gotten back way more than we pay for it, but, also our lives are changed and enriched. Over the last year and a half, things have changed dramatically for both of us.
Okay, yeah. Timber is being a good boy. I left him outside for 2 hours today because it was beautiful out, and he's pissed as fuck because he didn't get to sleep on the bed for those 2 hours. He's so mad at me. He's, like, torn the bed to pieces. He keeps getting up and just like pulling everything into a pile and laying down in the middle of it. And yes, I fully understand the irony of saying it was a beautiful day in the mid-50s, sunny and warm here in Portland, while people in the Midwest are experiencing negative 40 degrees right now.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Saw a short video, I think it was earlier today or last night, I can't remember, of the train workers in Chicago setting the tracks on fire so that the trains can run.
Mm-hmm. And for those of you that use Celsius, that's about 10 degrees Fahrenheit today for us.
Or 10
degrees Celsius today is about 50 Fahrenheit.
Kelsey says it will be negative 35 where she is in Canada.
Is that C or F?
I assume Fahrenheit.
So what's negative 35 Celsius?
I don't even know what that means. Just really, really cold, I think.
35 degrees below freezing. It's not quite as cold as negative 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Or am I getting that backwards? Yeah, no. Yeah.
Ogier's estimating negative 65 degrees Fahrenheit.
What? They merge at negative 40? That's right.
Oh, okay.
I was like, I know there's a negative number where they get really close.
That's absurd to me. I don't... cannot comprehend.
I'd just like to make a point that, like, Celsius is not an inherently SI unit temperature. It's just as arbitrary as Fahrenheit. Just saying. I love SI units, but Celsius is not necessarily one of them. And in some ways, I like the Fahrenheit because, 0 is cold, 100 is hot. Whereas in Celsius, 0 is cold, 100 is, boiling. Anyway. Anna... You'd think that unless the water has impurities or you're not at sea level or the ambient pressure is different because of a storm.
I hadn't even considered that, but yeah.
Yeah, like water freezing and boiling is actually not a great scientific standard.
Laughing at the responses.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, certainly Fahrenheit is also affected by similar. I'm not saying there is a superior temperature scale, but temperature is relative, which means that it doesn't have there's no absolute scale you can really put it on. There's no, yes, Kelvin is wonderful that it starts at, there is a 0 degrees, but when I say absolute scale, I mean, like, how big is a degree, right? Like, there's no way to say a degree is blah. Whereas all the other SI units actually are kind of inherently related to each other in terms of, like...
People get attached. I mean, I'm pretty hopeless if I'm not using the Imperial system. It's the only one I know.
I've learned some versions of SI because I've got, like... I did, the engineering background, so I had to learn. And I do think SI units make a lot more sense. But the basic length, weight measurements I tend to do in Imperial because I grew up with it.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?